I asked for it, and I got it. Questions! Thank you so much. I got a number of questions after my plea in the last episode. Thank you so much. I'm going to answer some of those questions in this episode, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Etsy and an update from about boric acid that we discussed in the episode number 73. So here's a question from a listener. You asked for podcast topics, so I thought I'd run an idea by you. I'm still working on my own business, and I'm currently a one-person shop. While I am building wood products, I'm also building a business that I hope to either be able to step away from or sell in a decade or two. This means that eventually I'll need employees and managers, but for now I'm working the problem of being able to produce everything I need to produce with only me. My thought is that as I develop products, I can also develop ways to hire out parts of the products or even entire products, starting with one or two things and building as we go along. This eliminates the immediate need for employees until the business is big enough to support them. For example, one product I'm building out there is a very common one. I'm not going to mention it because, well, to kind of protect him. I'm considering if I could hire out someone to create the parts on a CNC, and then I get them back for finishing and assembly. I have a small CNC, but it's not big enough for some of the parts. Yeah, we never go big enough, do we? Nope. Right now, I'm cutting them out on a bandsaw and then flush routing them on the router table. It's quite time consuming. So my questions are, number one, how to work well with other woodworkers in this matter? Really good question. I have done a bit of this, working for other people producing parts. Now, a lot of what I've done is kind of prototype work, where I'm working just to develop an idea. I had one gentleman that I was producing the final product, and then he was taking it a couple steps further. So how to work well with other woodworkers? I think one of the best things you can do as a business owner who wants to hire this work out, have someone else to produce this work, is answer as many questions that they're going to have right up front. And I think one of the very best ways that you can do that is have a set of drawings. Some great people I have worked with, none of them would I say were actual woodworkers. And so this communication thing, in fact, I have one group I work with every spring and fall. They're young, they're not experienced with a lot of things, and the concept of communicating a 3D object using either words or the spoken language is really, really difficult for them. And like it or not, we as woodworkers, we have our own parlance. We have our own vernacular. We have technical terms. And most people don't know those. And so it really becomes difficult in this communication thing. So I think you as a woodworker can cut through 90% of that by using the terms that we all use and having a set of drawings. I can't overemphasize that. You hand me a set of drawings, I can look at that, and I can come up with a pretty good estimate right there just by looking at a picture. They are that valuable. So I think that's the first thing. If you could provide a pattern, that's another step, which would be really good. That would basically save them having to make a pattern, depending on the work. But that drawing, I just cannot overemphasize that drawing. The other thing that you need to communicate, to discuss right up front, your wood or theirs. if you take them 50 board feet of walnut, do you want to scrap from that back? You might want to do that to see how efficiently they're using the wood. In other words, instead of kind of nesting different parts together on a board, to get multiple parts out of a 3-foot section, well, it's a lot faster just one part per section, boom, you just keep on going. Yet it's not a very good use of wood. Maybe you rely upon them to provide their own wood. And so now they may be a little bit more conscious of, making good, effective use out of the wood. And something like walnut, which in this area is getting really valuable, you might want that scrap back, because even just a little piece you can make something out of. So I really try not to throw away or burn walnut. Price. You have an advantage that since you've been making these things, you know about how long it takes. So if someone quotes you, 45 minutes to make this part, you can do it in 30 minutes. Well, there you go. There's a negotiating point. What is their shop rate? Your shop rate may be X. Their shop rate might be 2X. So you everyone's a little different. I'm blessed with having very low overhead. I'm cursed with having a very, very small shop. So, there's trade-offs, all the way around. So the way you do it may not be the way somebody else can do it. And that's why you shop. You want to see multiple bids. And it really comes down to how much is that part worth to you? It could be, let's just say $25 is what you think that you would charge someone else to make that part. If you can find someone who does that for $20, boom, you've just saved a little bit of money right there. And the other thing to consider is batch size. How many of those $20 parts do you need? If you can get 100, that's going to probably be a lot lower price than 5. 5, it may not even be worth shopping that out. Just make the 5. But if you can get these in lots of 100s, 50s, 500s, whatever, the case may be, that is how you're going to gain some economy of scale and get the individual price down, which will get your total price down for that particular product. Okay, so question number 2. He asked, should we be concerned with them stealing our ideas? Yes. Question number 3. Oh, you want more there? Yeah. Sure, of course. I mean, this is wood. This is not something like we've just invented, the latest and greatest technology. We haven't come out with a life-saving drug. We don't build spaceships, to go into outer space. We work with wood. We've been working with wood for, depending on what you believe, 5,000 years, 10,000 years, 100 trillion years. We've been working with wood, quite a long time, and there's literally nothing new under the sun when it comes to that. This is kind of where you need to judge, number one, your product. Honestly, come on. Is your product worth stealing? I mean, you might think so, but does anybody else? So, and then it's just trust. Do you trust this person? And he goes right into this in question number 3. Is there some kind of non-compete that should be developed? Something to consider. Absolutely. A gentleman's agreement or a contract. The big thing here is we have to discern how much money are we talking about. Are we talking about $500, $1,000, $5,000, $500,000? For a lot of the stuff that we as a single one person working probably out of our own shop, our basement, our garage, maybe an outbuilding. We are not rolling real big numbers here. Let's just face it. So I wouldn't get real deep into this. Now, something else to think about. You mentioned a non-compete clause, a non-compete contract. Think about exactly what that is. That is you asking another person, another producer, another workman to give up their rights. You're asking them to give up their rights not to compete against you. If that is real broad, you've in essence denied them the ability to make a living. Generally, non-competes are written so that you cannot compete within a certain parameter of things. You cannot compete in the same industry. You might get a non-compete to say that this person agrees not to compete with you in the making of this or similar product. That would be a little more palatable, so to speak. Non-competes are nice on paper, and I had a professor in a business law class who said they're basically only worth what you are willing to spend to defend them. So if you go to work for a company and they ask you to sign a non-compete, but you leave, you violate the non-compete and you go into business competing against them, and they kind of shrug their shoulders and it's like, oh, gee, bummer. And they don't do anything about it. Well, that's how much that non-compete was actually worth. And you also have to be careful that if you don't have a knowledgeable lawyer writing these things, it's very easy to make non-competes void, an invalid contract. It's very easy to do. Now, there's a difference between a non-compete and a non-disclosure. And this is where people sometimes get these mixed up. A non-disclosure agreement is something that someone calls you up and says, we need a object made of wood that is approximately 2 feet long, 3 inches thick, and has a convex shape to it. Very general description. That could be a bowl or a platter or something like that. But before we go into further discussion, would you be willing to sign a non-disclosure? And that's where you can either say yes or you can say no. If you do sign the non-disclosure, then talks continue and you find out that this is some special XYZ for a JY7, whatever that is. And you look at it, well, yeah, I could do that, $500. Oh, that's way over our budget. Okay, sorry, we couldn't work something out. Moving on. Well, you're still under that non-disclosure. If you run into your buddy, fellow woodworker, fellow, business owner, and said, yeah, I heard from them. They asked me to build a thing for the XY7. You can't do that. That's what they're trying to avoid. It's intellectual property rights, and those should be protected, when the case comes down. So those are kind of the differences between a non-compete and non-disclosures. There's a lot of non-compete clauses being used in the world today. Doctors. My understanding, there's like 4 giant healthcare monopolies in the United States, and I know of one, and probably all, of these giant corporation conglomerates have their physicians and other specialists sign a non-compete. Now think about that. A guy's been in this community, he's been practicing for 20 years, his kids are in school, his wife has a job she loves, a big conglomerate comes in, buys up the hospital and the local, offices, and everyone now works for big conglomerate. And when they do that, okay, part of your job is you need to sign this non-compete. And the non-compete basically says you cannot practice medicine except for us within a certain mile radius. And it could be 300 miles. It could be 50 miles, But the idea is to keep this new employee from working 3 months saying screw this and either returns to their previous employer or their previous practice, and we've just created a competition. They're trying to buy the competition is what they're doing. We have a term for this called monopoly, and okay, into my soapbox of what's wrong with healthcare in America. Boat designers. I spent a number of years in the paddle sport industry, canoes, kayaks, and you would have a very prominent boat designer, oftentimes manufacturer, wants to kind of retire, getting a little tired of this, long in the tooth, more time to paddle, and he sells the company. Well, I know of several of them who had, as part of the sales negotiation, had to sign a non-compete that they would not design boats or build boats for a period of 5 years or 10 years or whatever it happens to be. And I know one who just kind of amazingly launched a brand new kayak company 5 years and 1 day after he'd signed that document. I know a personal flotation device manufacturer, PFD manufacturer, did the exact same thing. Literally launched a new company the day after that contract expired. So good, bad, indifferent, they signed a 5-year non-compete. I hope they received a buku pile of cash for giving up that right. I would certainly want one. If somebody asks you to sign a non-compete, kind of take that as a compliment, because this person doesn't want to compete against you. That might be the exact moment you say, maybe there's an opportunity here. And you go into business and compete against them. If you didn't sign anything, hey, you're free to go. So anyway, you could use it. It's going to cost you money. If you write it yourself, or probably one of the forms you download off the internet is going to be worth exactly what it is. And if you don't do this right, you could be creating a lot more problems than you could be getting into. I signed one non-disclosure for a person who wanted me to build. And so it just didn't work out very well, and we parted ways on good terms, and so that was that. I knew the guy. My curiosity was really high, and I wanted to find out what he was up to. So anyway, this also moves into a discussion about intellectual property rights. I mean, I already brought it up. Patent. A trademark. Can you protect intellectual property rights in woodworking? Yeah, good luck with that. I remember a number of years ago in one of the woodworking magazines, there was this big dust-up about somebody who had built this bowl that was also a stringed instrument drum thingy, and he tried to get it patented, and it was... It kept us entertained for a number of months, let's put it that way. And I believe he spent a whole bunch of money and really had nothing to show for it in the end. In listening to some other people discuss this topic, the item itself is not really what's important. It's the process of how you get there. So if you develop some whiz-bang technique, some whiz-bang technology. Okay, I'll go ahead and jump into shark-infested waters. SawStop. That was a company that was started by a lawyer, who's also a woodworker, who saw an opportunity to develop a technology that would help woodworkers not lose extremities, digits. And he patented the technology and shopped it around to other saw manufacturers. Nobody was really interested. So he ended up building his own saws, and then eventually The patent was ready to expire, and it got bought by the parent company of Festool over in Germany, and that's kind of where it sits right now. But it was the technology that was patented, not the hot dog protecting table saw. And one very knowledgeable lawyer that I listened to on a podcast was talking about, in today's market, in the art market, in the craft market, woodwork, furniture, it's hard to copyright something, to trademark something, and defend it. Because a copyright, a trademark is only as good as the money you're willing to spend to protect it. And a good example of this would be Walt Disney. Very old company. They have a lot of images, of characters. It's a big property. Billions of dollars. Maybe not billions. Millions of dollars. And they are super aggressive at protecting their copyright. If you make something Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, any of the characters from the various movies, Bambi, and you make something and you take a photo of it and you put it up on Facebook and see what I made, I can sell these for $55. Guaranteed you're going to have a letter from their attorneys, and they have vast pools of attorneys that look for these violations, and you're going to get a cease and desist letter from them. Guaranteed. They are super, super aggressive about this. Now, you can contact Disney and say, hey, I make this. Would you, I'm interested in, having this licensed, in which you give them part of the proceeds. That is a totally different story. And from what I kind of understand, they're fairly into that, and anything that they can make money off of, at the same time protecting their image and likeness. And I've also heard people talking about, don't put all that time and money into protecting your particular item, copyright, trademark. Put that money into marketing, because a good marketer can defeat a good copywriter any day of the week. Because if you're not willing to defend that copyright, if you're not willing to spend some big bucks to do so, and lawyers don't come cheap, at least good ones don't, you'd be better off just go ahead and do it. And if somebody tries to copy it, outmarket them. Literally, outmarket them. You could have a mediocre widget and somebody else comes up with the world's greatest widget, but if you can outmarket them, guess what people are going to buy? Anyway, question number 4. Would another woodworker even sign one of these, the non-compete? We kind of addressed that. Maybe, no, depends. That's very much of an individual thing. Now, here's something that does come up. A fellow woodworker, maybe not a woodworker, that's why they've come to you, have asked you to make a box with a lid and some special feature to it. There's been boxes with lids made, throughout eternity, for as long as we've been working wood. And you make 100 of these for them, and then you just kind of don't hear from them for a while. Hopefully they paid you for the last batch that they ordered from you. And you send an email, yeah, things have kind of changed a little bit, kind of regrouping, I'll get back to you. And you don't hear from them for a bit, and you contact them again, and you don't hear anything back. Email undeliverable. Ouch. Now what do you do? Well, this was a good product. It was easy to make. It was profitable to make. You liked making them, which is really important. But they're ghosts. They're gone. You haven't heard anything. Can you pick that product up and start selling it as your own? Well, kind of depends on the product, kind of depends on that person, kind of depends on you. I had one experience with this. The product I didn't particularly like making. It was a bit fussy, so to speak. to get to all the little parts to fit together just right and do this and the jigs and it was profitable. I didn't really enjoy making them. And this person just kind of went away, and I have all these things. I have all the jigs. I have the materials. I even have some partially built items. Do I want to pick this up and pursue? No, not really. It wasn't something that I was really passionate about. It wasn't something that I've wanted to put the marketing effort into promoting and selling this. So it's dead. In fact, I ended up burning the jigs for it. So abandoned projects, it's kind of up to you. If you can find the person and ask, you haven't been doing anything with this for 6 months, a year, would you mind if I take that over? They may give you your blessing. If it was something they created, you might want to throw them some money, have them sign a document that you buy all rights and so on and so forth. Work it out that way. But if it's just totally abandoned, you haven't heard from this person, you can't contact them, then I would say that you're free to proceed with that. Question number 5. What would make a good partnership? That's easy. A good lawyer. No, seriously. Number 1, I'm partnership adverse. As you know, I'm a big fan of Dave Ramsey. He says the only ship that won't sail is a partnership. So why a partnership? To me, that just sounds, the only partnership I've ever been associated with is my wife, and that was by marriage, under God. And that's worked out really well, but I wouldn't want to embark in a partnership with somebody else. There's just so many ways for this to go wrong. And I was talking to an electrician to get some electrical work done, and he mentioned that he used to work for this company, and the original owners sold it to a young couple. They had great plans for it. The business was going forward. They were making money. They were, making progress, and he died. He just died. And now his wife owns the company and is in partnership with his former partner. This starts to get sticky. And this is where a really good lawyer who specializes in partnerships should be consulted to work through these things. And what if that wife passes away and the share of that partnership passes to their children? And now you have, a 23-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 14-year-old that you're partners with. You can just see how, you're going to spend a lot more time on the partnership than you are on the business. So, no, I'm not a fan of partnership. I personally would not do it, and I wouldn't really recommend, anyone else to do it. So those were the questions that he asked. The one thing I would like to address in addition to this is his statement, I'm also building a business that I hope to either be able to step away from or sell in a decade or 2. Great idea, thinking ahead, having a game plan, having goals. But we beg the question, what value will this woodworking business have in 10 years? And remember, one person, no employees, probably a small shop. I think we tend to overvalue what this is worth. And that gets into the whole thing of valuation. Well, what is any business worth? Well, it's worth what it can produce. How much profit has it produced over the last 3 years? And if you're buying a business or thinking about this, you want to see the last 3 years tax returns. Oh, there's no tax returns? Oh, there is no deal. Because you can say one thing, but tell the IRS something else. Nope, not going there. There's net asset value. How much are your tools worth? How much is the lumber worth? Is the property part of a homestead? Is it a commercial property? Is there three-phase power to it? A nice workshop? Those things all come into play, but you're buying an asset. You're not really buying a business. The tools, were they bought last year or bought last, century? Is there a fantastic lumber supply? You've got 5 barns full of lumber. Well, that's going to be worth something. We had a business in this area that was producing a twidget. No, actually that was a widget, and selling it on Amazon. And they were doing pretty well with this. This was an older couple, and he had passed away and his wife had a business. She continued it for, I think, about a year, and she was no spring chicken, and she decided she just wants to be done with this. And she wanted to sell the business. And she was asking a pretty proud dollar amount for the business, and largely based off of sales that she had on Amazon. Now, the problem with Amazon is that is one marketplace, and that is a marketplace you have almost no control over. And if they decided to pull the plug, you're out of business. And so what you may have spent thousands and thousands of dollars for, is boom, up in smoke, just poof, overnight. So again, we kind of get back to the asset value of this. And I got the information that she was offering, and she did a wonderful job preparing a seller's packet. This is the tools, this is the technology, which was basically the jigs that they had developed to make these different things. She had the time per product down, to the second, all the materials list, did a wonderful job. You could go on to Amazon and you could, kind of do some research and figure out, yeah, they're actually doing this. And nobody bit. A lot of people read, nobody bit. And a couple years later, I went to the auction. They had sold some of the tools, some of the better tools, I think went to family members, as it should. And a lot of the jigs and things like that, there was no sale on that because it's so incredibly specialized. And honestly, I didn't want to make that product. It just wasn't something that spoke to me. So I passed. Okay, last episode, I also went out with a challenge question asking you if your biggest challenges as a one-person woodworking operation, or someone who is thinking about jumping into this arena, what's your biggest challenge? Is it skills? Is it resources? Is it finances? And I had a listener replied and said skills. For me right now, it's figuring out how to differentiate myself from my competition. There are a ton of folks making the same thing I make, and some of them, I honestly don't know how they are making any money with the low prices they are charging. I think this also rolls into marketing and getting in front of the right people, and will take a little trial and error to find my customers. Yeah, just because you're making a widget and selling it for $50 and there's someone else down the road making virtually the exact same thing, and they're selling it for $25, it's incredibly possible that they are losing money on that. The old joke, how do you make $1 million as a woodworker? Start with $2 million. So somebody could say, yeah, I have sales over $100,000 a year. Wow, that is really good, in woodworking. One person shop, that's impressive. Yeah, but it's costing me $110,000 to do that. So, success in making and selling a product, I think, should be measured more in years doing that than in the price that they're selling it for. Because eventually, if they're working for free, in other words, they're covering their material cost, eventually they're going to figure that out and not do that anymore. Or you do something to differentiate yourself from them. And let's say you're making, well, I'll use the haircut analogy. There's a famous story in marketing of a barber who was in a strip mall, been there for 25 years, wonderful clientele. Right across the road, this new national haircut barber chain moved in. You know the type. This barber was charging $12 for a haircut, and on a big marquee out in front of the new haircut place, it said haircut $6. He immediately saw a drop in his business. Only a few of his regular clientele came in. He could see that some of his clientele were going over across the street to the $6 haircut place, and he's like, I could go out of business with this. I mean, I can't do haircuts for $6. Literally, I cannot pay the bills with that. What am I going to do? Well, a very, very clever friend of his suggested that he change his marketing. And so the next day, he rented one of those great big, lighted billboard signs, and he put it out in front of his business, and it simply said, "We fix $6 haircuts." Boom! His business started to flood back in, and eventually that new $6 haircut business folded and went out of business. So competition's a funny thing. And you are absolutely right. You have to get in front of the right people. You have to develop a product that is unique, that you know that people will want to buy. And it could be, this is summertime. People are making outdoor furniture. You can go to the lumber yard and buy a bunch of 2x4s. And you can craft a piece of outdoor furniture, a chair. And you can sell that. You can spend $25 on 2x4s and sell it for $75. Boom. You made a $50 profit. Well, it's until you back out your time and your overhead and your tools and all that other stuff. Or you could buy quarter sawn white oak, and you could make that same chair and sell it for $750. Whoa. Well, it might cost you $100 in quarter sawn white oak. But if you can market that, if you can sell that this is made out of white oak, number one, it's frickin' beautiful. It is just gorgeous. You have a really good, attractive design, and you have a product that is going to last for generations instead of seasons. 2x4 chair, nothing wrong with them. I've actually made them myself, but they're not long-lived. You're not going to pass that on to your grandchildren. If you can get in front of the people who have $750 to spend on one chair, that's where you need to be with that particular product. So it's easy to do woodworking. It's hard to do marketing. This person also pointed out a unique marketing idea that he saw on Facebook. Not my favorite place. But this is a chainsaw carver. These are the folks who have a big chainsaw, and they take a block of firewood and they make something really attractive. Some of these people are incredibly talented. And this person, it's a young lady, on her Facebook page, I've got a link to it in the show notes. She starts with a piece of, firewood, and she shows progress photos that it's totally in the rough. And then she does the first shaping and the second shaping, and then the details start and she's taking photos throughout this. And then she will do a post that says this piece will drop gives a date. And then she explains the first person to claim this piece gets it, and she'll list a price. So she is selling the piece before it actually gets done, which I think is brilliant. I guess that if nobody claims it, then, well, she may not even finish it. Save the time, move on to something else, or, have a happy accident and change it into, some other item. And he mentioned, he says, it looks like virtually all of her pieces get claimed, which that's a wonderful thing. I'm old, I'm crotchety, cantankerous, and this is a different way of thinking than, young people who grew up with a cell phone in their hand. They think differently and they can market differently. I had a guy who wanted me to buy his wide belt drum sander, a time saver. That bloody thing wouldn't even fit in my shop. And he was making products, he was selling, made a whole bunch of money, but he was out of it. He was out of woodworking. And I asked him how he was doing this, and he says Instagram. What? Yeah, he never had a website, never did a craft show, never did anything. Everything was done on Instagram. I can't even wrap my brain around that. I don't know how that works. So you young folks out there, I'm sure that you're talented enough, you're smart enough that you can figure out how this works, and that could be a tremendous avenue for you. So recommendations for this episode, again, a link for the chainsaw carver in there, and Etsy Up. If you're not familiar, if you're not on Etsy, still may be something of interest for you if you're thinking about getting on Etsy. Etsy Up is a series of training, informative lectures, programs on YouTube that they tackle different items, different segments. And they had one a couple weeks ago. Honestly, it's the first one I ever attended. It was about 2.5 hours long. I just happened to be sanding a table that day. And so this makes sanding, go a lot easier. It was very informative. Some things I, kind of skipped over, not applicable to what I do, but other things were very interesting. In fact, I believe that the next one coming up is on using Google search engine tactics to improve your Etsy sales. I'm looking forward to that. And there's a link to another YouTube video in there, Keith Johnson Custom Woodworking. This is a guy who does really big projects with a very small shop, and he warns about making a big mistake that probably we all have made at one time or the other if we've been doing this for any length of time. So check that out. Very, very good. And then my update on borax versus boric acid. I admitted that I did not really know the difference in that, and I did some research, and basically boric acid has another hydrogen atom shoved into it. And what this does is borax, if you've ever used it, it's a powder. It's like sugar or salt it is a salt. So it's that consistency. And I mixed some up with just water, and, it's spring. Yeah, we have ants in the kitchen. I know, future project. And so I basically just kind of sprinkled some of this around, and there was one ant that ran through it, and he literally shriveled up and died. And for about a week or so, we didn't see any ants, and it was wonderful. Now they're starting to come back, and borax was used, I guess in the old days, as a cleaning soap. People would mix this up in a bucket of water, and they would clean their house with borax. And this acted as kind of a bug repellent. And it's something that we just don't do anymore. The boric acid, with the extra hydrogen, that takes the borax into a very, very fine solution, almost like tea or coffee. And you can spray this someplace, and since the particles are so small, any insects who just literally walk across that are going to pick that up, and then hopefully it will, kill them. Where the borax, I watched some ants literally avoid the area that I had applied this to. So that's the difference. It's just a more penetrating solution of the borax. Anyway, missed job, rocking chair. I mean, I use that as an illustration, but literally, grandmother's rocking chair. I'm not making this up. She would like it refinished. The joints are loose, so it's going to need to be disassembled and cleaned and re-glued, reassembled. When you do a project like this, this was a lady who, she's not a spring chicken. She's not a college student. This was her grandmother's chair. So this could be, I don't know, 100 years old. And it's just now coming due for some rework, some refinish. When you do these type of jobs, these are 50 to 100 year projects. You're fixing something, hopefully, in a way that her family is not going to have to worry about this for another 50 or 100 years. So take your time when you're doing this and mention this to folks that, this is going to last a while. And you're doing a really good job, quality work. It's money very well spent, because in 50 years, it's going to cost a heck of a lot more to repair that than it does today. Special thanks to listeners in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and Naas, Kildare, Ireland, and one listener in Zambia. Thank you all so much. There's a whole bunch of great affiliate links in the show notes, tools, phone service, etc. If anyone is stuck with a project or stuck in their business or thinking about starting a business and not real sure how to go about it, give me a call. Happy to set up a coaching call with you and work through. And right back at you, if anyone is well-versed in video production, Google Analytics, or 403 errors, I would be most interested to hear from you. And yeah, I would pay for some of your time. Absolutely. So if you'd like to support the show, if you've been finding this helpful, you can buy me a cup of coffee, and I would be very, very grateful. So until next episode, happy woodworking.